In Murim, in the monastery of the cult of the heavenly demon, sat the one in whose honor the monastery was named, the patriarch of the heavenly demon himself. Kneeling in front of him was the first elder of the monastic order, the so-called Demon Fist, who was interested in why Hyungnim was inactive when all 9 sects, orthodox and unorthodox, were already subordinate to them. The patriarch stood next to him and began to say that he was not carefree, and if he forgot, then one day, during the practice of divine arts, the body and soul of the patriarch were separated, which is why he could not return back to his body. He looked into the distance, saying that at first it was fun, because he could fly to the moon if he wanted, when suddenly the fist demon again said that the heavenly demon did not care about the monastery. The patriarch immediately became angry that he did not listen to him at all and did not stop roaring. Having calmed down, he walked away and said that no matter how master of the divine arts he was, without a physical body everything was useless. Suddenly, right in front of the patriarch, some kind of incomprehensible black hole formed, into which he was drawn with some irresistible force. In attempts to resist, he activated the weight of the rock, that is, a magical technique that increases body weight to 6 tons, but, unfortunately, this did not change the circumstances one bit. He realized that without a physical body such spells did not work only when there were only a few seconds left before he was completely sucked into the portal. One day, portals to other worlds simultaneously opened all over the earth, and hundreds of monsters began to crawl out of these portals onto the earth, destroying everything and everyone that came in their way, after which humanity launched a counterattack with the best weapons of its time. However, modern weapons were useless against monsters, humanity was threatened with complete destruction, and then superpowers began to awaken in people. Among them, Class C hunters stood out, in whom the abilities of the highest power awakened and their weapons were effective. When the war ended in victory, the C-class hunters gained unlimited power. But there is also 1% of people left without superpowers, the so-called ordinary people, one of whom is Park Hyun-soo. A message came to his phone saying that due to an acute shortage of beds, if the debt is not paid, they will have to discharge Hyuntae, which means dooming him to a painful death. After reading this, Puck grabbed the rope, deciding that this was the only way out of this situation. He considered that it was better to die than to see his last loved one die in agony like others. But if he did not have a guardian, then the state would take care of him. Park Soo had already mentally said goodbye to life and asked for forgiveness from Hyuntae, when suddenly the tears from his eyes began to be blown away by a strong wind from the portal that had just miraculously appeared behind him. Suddenly, a heavenly demon flew out of this portal and flew into the guy with all his might, accidentally knocking him onto the bed. Park Soo was seriously frightened and began to ask the unexpected guest about who he was, and the demon was surprised that the guy could see him. Puck began to say that if the purpose of the visit was to rob him, then the demon had the wrong door, because Puck was naked as a falcon and had nothing valuable, while the demon looked around the room, trying to understand where he was. The demon took off and headed to the other end of the room and was upset when it turned out that he was still incorporeal after all. Puck covered his face with his hands and decided that the guest who had appeared was the ghost of death, which had come for his soul, after which he desperately cried out that he had changed his mind about dying, because he had a brother whom he wanted to protect, and began to beg for mercy. The demon flared up and saying that first he was a thief, and now also the ghost of death. He hit Puck hard on the forehead. The demon touched the top of Park Soo's head and was surprised that he could touch the guy, and poor frightened Park at that time begged him to stop and not hit him. The demon hovered in the air, thinking about something of his own, after which he left the apartment, passing through the closed door, and Puck was perplexed by what was happening. Soon he found himself on a busy street in the city and, looking around, he followed every car with his eyes and was surprised that people rode in carts without horses, and the carts, however, were fast. He flew up to the first passerby he came across and wanted to ask him for something, but he simply walked on, and the demon's hand passed through his body. Looking at his hand, he noticed something that he again could not touch, after which he came to the conclusion that he was material only for that boy. Suddenly, the demon seemed to be suddenly sucked into some unknown again, which left him dumbfounded. At this time, Pak-Soo sealed up the black hole, which frightened him so much, which most likely caused what happened to the demon. Puck was thinking that he should report to the authorities about the portal that had appeared, when suddenly his phone rang. As it turned out, he received a call from Hunter Kim Hak-sung, who asked for help with the situation that had happened on the portal, saying that he needed support. Park immediately agreed and said that he was leaving right now, after which Kim provided information that help was needed in the Class B portal. Park sighed with relief and admitted to himself that death was not a solution at all, after which he smiled because Kim Haksung himself, a B-class hunter, called him. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a heavenly demon appeared, who grumbled that in his area people who talk to themselves are called holy fools, and Puck was very frightened by the second unexpected appearance of the demon. When asked why he was here again, the demon, scratching his beard, replied that he himself was not particularly interested in returning to this wretched hut, then added that he tried to leave, but an unknown force forced him to return back. The demon asked Puck where he was going, to which the guy replied that he had to get to the portal to help people, and then asked the guest to at least find another place to live before his return. The demon said that in the telephone conversation some portals and hunters were constantly mentioned, and then asked what it all meant, to which Puck was very surprised at the guest's ignorance. Slamming the door, the guy said that he had no time to explain, after which he said that if the demon did not get out of his apartment, he would call the police. The demon took the guy by the hood and said that by the time he got there on his own 2 feet, the sun would already set, after which he activated the wings of the heavenly demon and rushed to the arrival point along with the guy. A crowd of ordinary onlookers on the street watched Park Soo flying in the air, thinking that he was an awakened one. At that time, Puck begged the heavenly demon to bring him down to earth, because he noticed strange looks from people. Suddenly noticing his red bus, Park Hyun-soo shouted that they were already there, and he urgently needed to get down to the ground, and when this happened, the guy suddenly felt rather bad, which the demon could not understand. Sitting on the bus, Puck thought that even though Class B portals were dangerous, if he survived, there would be enough money to pay off the debts for the hospital. Suddenly, a demon looked out from somewhere above with a question to the guy about where he was going, as a result of which he scared the hell out of the poor guy with his sharpness and surprise. Puck asked the demon why he was still following him, to which he received the answer that some irresistible force returns the demon every time he tries to leave. The guy began to try to figure out what this old man wanted from him, and was also worried about the thought that now a ghost would follow him on his heels. While the demon was glad that there would be a little less boredom in his life, because now he had someone to talk to. A portal opened at the top of Mount Ilcha, which the hunters had already reached, so at its foot the support staff were told that everyone should take a piece of equipment. Everyone obeyed the order and, each taking a box, began to move towards the portal on the mountain. Having reached their destination, everyone stopped and began to listen to the instructions of Kim Haksung, the commander of the operation on this portal, who began to say that the reconnaissance squad would include 1 B-class hunter, 4 C-class hunters and 5 supports. His assistant Iron, also a B-class huntress, reminded him of the danger of the B-class portal and asked the battle-hardened ones to keep an eye on the newcomers. While checking his equipment, Park Soo was distracted by a familiar voice that said that they had not seen each other for a long time. The owner of this voice turned out to be Choi Jun-sung, who was surprised that Park was still a support despite what he did in the last operation. Park was not delighted with his presence, because Jun-sung beats people left and right, deliberately provoking them and pretending to be joking. Once he even incapacitated Park for a whole month just like that. Jun said that he would not touch Park and joined him, after which he quietly asked who called him, in response receiving the name of the hunter Kim Han-sung. Not keeping his promise and hitting the guy in the chest, he left with a request to Puck not to be like last time today. A heavenly demon, indignant at Jun's behavior, appeared nearby, after which Park complained to him that Choi Jun's son always causes problems and blames others. After his words, Park again received a strong blow, only this time on the back of the head and from a demon, and not from Jun. Park was angry that the demon was also fighting, while the supports standing behind him did not understand what was happening to Park, since he began to talk to himself, and decided that he was somehow strange. When everyone began to enter the portal, Puck screamed again, only this time from an unpleasant feeling that he would never get used to, even if he had already been through the portal 100 times. At that time, the demon was thinking that he was experiencing the same sensations as when he was sucked into the world of Park Soo. Finding himself in the world on the other side of the portal, Park noticed the dried earth and was surprised by it. Kim Hak-sun asked one girl to conduct an analysis in order to find out what kind of world they would have to deal with. The demon told Puck to go ahead and scout the area on his own, but he refused because they couldn't do that without orders. The demon noticed that Puck couldn't even move a step back, because he was just a servant porter, to which Puck had nothing to object to. The heavenly demon said that on the surface there is a desert, but at the same time he feels the movement of underground waters, to which Puck said that if someone other than him had seen the old man, they would probably have said that he was some kind of oracle. The girl told Kim that according to the indicators of the device, the essence of this world is water, no matter how strange it may sound. June began to press the girl and say that most likely she made a mistake in the settings and screwed up the measurements, to which he received confidence from her that the results were correct. Out of anger, June stomped his foot hard and said that such a result was impossible, but immediately a fountain began to break out from under his feet, which he punched with his foot, and suddenly the fountains began to spread one by one. A moment later, a huge number of mermaids began to jump out of the fountains, causing everyone to panic, and one of the main ones asked all the newcomers to stick with the hunters. Before he could finish speaking, a merman suddenly appeared out of nowhere, sending the poor fellow to the afterlife by piercing his chest with a trident. Puck was beside himself with horror, because this couldn't happen, because the entrance to the portal is usually a safe zone, and now even Class B hunters can barely cope. Suddenly he was distracted from his thoughts by his partner asking for a spear, and when Pak Hyun took it out, he turned around and noticed a merman flying towards him with a trident. From the powerful blow, Hyun-soo flew several meters away and was stunned by the fact that the monster's harpoon pierced his strongest body armor like a simple rag. Hearing a strange sound, Hen raised his head and saw a huge merman in front of him, holding some kind of incomprehensible weapon in his hands. The monster was about to swing, but the blow of the heavenly demon king who appeared in time was 10 times stronger than the highest technique of the Shaolin monks, that is, snapping his fingers. The demon was surprised that it seemed like he could fight monsters, and then decided that it was worth showing Pak a master in battle. The mermaids began to attack the demon with all their strength and from all sides, but all their attempts were unsuccessful, because the heavenly demon evaded flawlessly. When the demon got tired of playing catch-up, he pointed out to the merman that he was about 1,000 years too young to inflict even a scratch on the demon. After speaking, he cut the monster into two without any effort, proving his greatness in front of him. Immediately another merman rushed at him, wanting to avenge his fallen brother. The demon froze in the air, saying that he considers mermaids disgusting, because they are only a parody of the human image. He pointed his fist at the monster and activated a burst of chaos, destroying all opponents within a distance of 45 meters in the direction. The monster was destroyed, the earth parted, forming a channel, along the edges of which stood the people of the detachment, who somehow managed to jump away and save their lives. Jun-sung was seriously scared and began to try to find out who was doing such powerful blows, and when Iron suggested the option of Park Hyun-soo, he replied that this was impossible, because he was a simple support and an ordinary person. Suddenly, another huge merman, to whom the demon gave the nickname Fish Prince, climbed up the cliff to the top of the mountain. The demon had already managed to please the merman that he had the honor of dying at the hands of the master, but upon impact he simply passed through the monster's body, which left him unpleasantly shocked. He realized that the chi energy had left him, and he could no longer harm the monsters. Suddenly, a merman jumped down on Park Soo from above the cliff and dealt him a very strong blow, for which the guy was not prepared, which is why he did not have time to react. All he could do was the block, which literally saved his life, but now he can't stand much more. A demon suddenly found himself next to Puck, who explained to him that he would die if he did not get up right away. As soon as these words were spoken, Pak noticed a demon taking hold above him and immediately jumped back, thanks to which he remained alive. The demon immediately picked up the boy and flew up with him, tired of waiting for the moment when Puck thought of getting up, and during the flight he drew the attention of Puck, who had already resigned himself to the loss and death, to the details of the monster. This creature looks strong, but it is worth noting its thin, protruding bones, which are a weak point, especially the collarbone. After the explanation, the old man pushed Puck towards the monster, and ordered him to break his bones in weak spots. Finding himself face to face with the merman, Hyun-soo began to say that he had no intention of doing anything to him, and that he was simply pushed in this direction. The demon reminded him that in close combat he should use his elbows and break the enemy's collarbone, to which Puck shouted that he couldn't. The heavenly demon ordered the guy to look at the enemy, and he suddenly switched gears and decided that he didn't care about the consequences, after which he hit the monster's jaw with all his might. This allowed access to the collarbone, which Puck immediately took advantage of and delivered another powerful blow with his elbow to the merman's collarbone, breaking his chest. Having kicked the fallen monster to death, Puck seemed to wake up and calm down, then looked at his hands and was surprised that he could knock out the merman with them. The voice of a demon behind him distracted him from his thoughts and the guy turned around, after which he received a question about the reason that he stood rooted to the spot. Then he noticed a spear on the ground at his feet, and the order came from the demon to finish off the merman. Puck obediently took the spear, but again froze in fear, because previously he had only killed many small monsters, but this was the first time he had encountered such a creature. The demon started talking about how if Puck lets the monster rise, it will finish him off, so there is no time to hesitate here. You need to finish off the merman as soon as possible and go help your comrades, who have it much harder in the epicenter of the battlefield. All the heartbreaking events flashed through his head about how the accident happened, as a result of which his parents died and his brother ended up in the hospital, which contributed to the influx of rage, and Puck swung his spear. He shouted accusations towards the monster, believing that the accident was the fault of people like him, after which he stabbed the sharp weapon as deeply as possible with all his might, spattering blood all around. Suddenly something strange began to happen and Puck received a notification that he had expanded his boundaries, overcoming difficulties. He was sincerely glad that now he could finally become awakened, as he had long dreamed of. He began to look at his own statistics that appeared in front of him, and suddenly saw the discovery of a new unique ability, which implied following prompts. This made him start to mock himself for having somehow managed to awaken such a useless ability. June and Iron stood together, and worried that they were close to defeat, because their formation was broken, sincerely not understanding how such monsters could appear in a B-class portal. June turned towards the half-dead squad and ordered everyone to retreat, saying that intelligence had failed them. This portal turned out to be of a higher class, so they needed to leave here as soon as possible. Jaren also gave the command to retreat immediately until more arrived, and asked everyone who was standing to help the wounded. Puck thought that this was the first time in his life when he found himself in such a dangerous situation, and the demon who was nearby again said that Puck had a good chance to go to the next world. June, who was passing by, noticed Hyun-soo and approached him to tell him that when they returned, they would need to discuss something. Puck became very worried, thinking that he had done something wrong and now he would face severe punishment. When everyone had crossed the portal and gathered together, the Class B hunters said that those who died in this battle would be awarded posthumously by the association, after which they declared a minute of silence in honor of their fallen comrades. One of the hunters mused how unfortunate it was that the association would likely blame this incident on their seniors, despite their pain and loss. Suddenly, he was distracted from his thoughts by June shouting that today they had found one awakened one, after which he pointed to Park Hyun-soo and asked for applause. While the entire squad cheered and clapped, Puck was surprised at how the hunters were able to find out about this and finally understood what June wanted to talk about. The elders ordered that all the equipment be packed back into its original position, as it is the property of the association. The obediently packing Park was frightened by the sudden appearance of June, who, hugging the guy, asked if he was happy. Slapping Park Soo in the face, he said displeasedly that today someone has gone crazy, and someone is now newly awakened. After that, he pulled away from the guy and began to mock him, forcing him to tell what ability he had discovered. People standing by the buses were discussing the fact that Choi Jun-sung was again digging into the supports, although they themselves were also interested in what ability Park had awakened. Park thought about whether he should say his ability, after which he said it anyway, and Jun-sung couldn't help but laugh at the fact that Hyun-soo's unique ability is following clues. The demon asked Puck if he understood correctly that the guy was embarrassed by his ability, after which Puck asked him to just keep quiet, thinking about the fact that he didn't want to become a laughingstock. June noticed this and began to wonder who Puck was talking to, after which he made fun of him, saying that when he woke up, the roof began to leak. Suddenly, June swung sharply and with great speed, offering to test Puck's ability. The guy received a notification that following the prompts was activated, and suddenly a demon appeared behind him, ordering him to take a step back. Puck obediently walked away, which is why June missed and even almost fell in front of the entire squad, not understanding how Puck managed to beat him. A notification came that the use of the ability was successful and, in connection with this, the attack power was increased by 15%, and at this time the intoxicated June began to insult Pack and offer him a fight. June began to gain momentum again, and the demon ordered a tiger squat to the left and a lightning strike to the right. The initiation of recording the technique began, comparable to the feeling that time had stopped in order to record a new technique in Pack's memory. Hyun-soo did everything as the demon punished him, thanks to which he received a very strong blow, which June, of course, was not ready for. Jun-sung flew to the side, simultaneously doing several somersaults on the ground and buried his face in the ground. A crowd of onlookers gathered around him, discussing the fact that Puck was able to knock down a Class B hunter with just one blow, and June was trying to understand how this was possible, given that the guy had woken up only a couple of hours ago. While everyone was busy with June and checking his pulse, Park looked at his hand and was incredibly shocked that he had knocked out Choi Jun-sung with one blow. Kim Hak-sun approached the guy and reminded him that the use of force against a colleague is strictly prohibited and may result in criminal liability. Then he said that for the first time he would pretend that nothing had happened, and also put in a good word for Pack in the association, then asked him to come for the assessment, because he needed to be assigned a class. Suddenly, Iron approached Park Hyun-soo and extended her hand, congratulating the guy on waking up and wanting to work with him, after which the guy's heart fluttered because such a beautiful girl spoke to him. The demon asked Pack if he had feelings for Iron, after which he began to deny and asked him not to say nonsense, which the departing Iron noticed and considered the guy strange, because he was talking to himself. Hyun-soo stood and collected his thoughts, and the demon, noticing this, ordered him to speak, because he still couldn't read thoughts, after which Park fell on his knees to the floor and began to beg to take him as a student and teach him martial arts. The demon firmly refused the request, saying that he never takes anyone as a student, because if he undertakes to babysit someone, then how will he have time to practice martial arts? The demon turned around and Puck asked him what the point of practice was if the demon was incorporeal. He also mentioned earlier that he was literally dying of boredom. Pack said that if he died, the demon would still not return to where he came from, after which the demon mentally admitted that there was a grain of truth in this. The guy reminded the demon how helpless he was in the portal, and said that without the old man's help he would not have been able to do anything at all. The demon asked the guy that if he taught him and Hyun-soo rose to the rank of hunter, then whether Park would have freedom of movement everywhere, and in all worlds. The guy said that if he reaches Class A, he will really be able to go wherever he wants, and if he reaches Class C, he will become untouchable, that is, no one will be able to challenge him. The demon took off and ordered the guy to go through the ritual of 9 bows, that is, bow right here and now if he wants to be the demon's teacher. Puck turned back and saw a huge number of people to whom he would not want to bow to the invisible demon, but when he said that it was either now or never, Puck obediently began to bow in front of everyone. Iron told Kim that, in her opinion, Pack was not at home, but Kim did not pay much attention to this, saying that sooner or later Pack would leave. The demon asked Puck how he could live and, moreover, was going to serve his teacher in such a pigsty, then ordered him to immediately clean up. When the demon asked how many slaps Puck would need to get moving, he immediately began to tidy up like a cute little guy. When the demon asked why the paper was glued to the wall, the guy moved the paper a little and explained that this was the portal from which the demon came, and he had stuck it because of an inexplicable fear. The demon came closer to the portal, completely tore off the paper, and scratching his beard a little, entered the portal, taking with him the unaware Puck. On the other side of the portal there was a strange place in which there was nothing more than emptiness, so the demon decided that this was a great place for Puck to go through the trials of life and death. The demon ordered the guy to take off his shirt and sit down, and when he asked what would happen next, the demon ordered him not to contradict the teacher. Pack did just that. Then the demon began to adjust the flow of the guy's meridians and energy nodes, because before studying martial arts it is necessary that the energy currents, like the blood circulation, be clean and unhindered. The demon said that if this was too much for Puck, then he wouldn't be able to cope with his studies, after which he began to pound the poor guy's back with all his might. Surprised at how stable Hyun-soo's body was, he began to perform the last ritual. At the end of his actions, the demon said that he had not seen such a healthy body for a long time. The demon was surprised that cleaning the chakras took so little time, after which he asked Puck if everything was okay, to which he replied that he almost died from the pain, a little more, and he would have died. The heavenly demon looked at Puck with regret, because his body is ideal for martial arts, but he lives in a time when martial arts are forgotten. As soon as they returned back to Puck's room, he was glad that his fatigue had disappeared as if by hand, and now he finally felt light. The demon replied that this was natural, because he cleared his clogged chakras, and Hyun-soo continued to rejoice in the fact that he felt so light, as if he could fly up. After that, he suddenly really took off and fit his head into the ceiling, and the demon finally remembered that he forgot to tell Puck something. With his hands folded over his chest, he confessed that he had shared his chi energy with Hyun-soo, in other words, a piece of the heavenly demon's divine skill. When Puck fell to the floor, the demon said that in fact, it was dangerous, and he was still amazed that Puck survived at all. Hyun-soo screamed that the demon almost killed him, after which he rushed at him, but in vain, because he only flew back from the powerful blow of the demon. The demon ordered the guy not to raise his voice at the teacher, and when asked what he would do if he killed Hyun-soo, he calmly replied that in the end he did not kill. The demon explained that the fact is that if Puck couldn't withstand even a particle of his divine energy, he wouldn't even be able to begin training, and what Puck learned yesterday is the only technique available to mortals. The next day, Park stood at the reception desk, and when the girl asked what she could do to help, Park Hyun-soo replied that Hunter Kim Hak's son had to sign him up for an assessment. The girl was very surprised and literally lit up with happiness when she found out the client's name, and immediately asked for a selfie with him. Then she said to go down to the 5th underground floor. There Park will find the appraisal department, where he will need to find the chief appraiser Nak-soo. While Hyun-soo was riding in the elevator, he was worried, and the demon tried to calm him down and talked about how Park should get a rank in order to be his student. When Hyun-soo entered the room, he saw a girl in front of him hitting the power meter with such force that on his screen the number on the meter displayed 687. However, young Nak-soo, that is, the chief appraiser, classified it as B class, because the A-class strike is more than 900 units. Hearing a strange noise, Nak-soo looked out of his room and saw Park, recognized him and greeted him. Although Park arrived early, Nak-soo invited him to enter the room where the woman and Chang-hoon were already there, who immediately extended his hand and was glad that he had the honor of seeing Hyun-soo live. Nak-soo explained that word had already spread about Hyun-soo's exploits, and Jang-hoon added that he was delighted with how Hyun-soo put Choi Jun-sung in his place. Passing by a girl who scored almost 700 units, Hyun-soo looked at her, and she looked at him, after which he was embarrassed, because he had never had such eye contact with strangers before. The demon asked the guy what this unhealthy fear of women was, and Hyun-soo shouted in response that he had no fear, which the girl noticed, and deciding that he was strange, turned around and left. On the way to the next evaluation, the girl asked the evaluator whether Hyun-soo was truly awakened, to which she received a positive answer. After that, she hit the air and said that then perhaps this is her future colleague, and they will meet in battle. At this time, Puck was worried about his appearance, because the clothes were too tight, which caused discomfort. The teacher clicked and said that this was obscene, because clothes should hide the loins, otherwise why would they be needed? Leaving through the wall, he continued, saying that walking around in what your mother gave birth to is more decent than this, and then called Puck shameless. When Pack stood near the strength meter, he heard the voice of a demon, who told him to feel the center of chi energy in the human body, because the power that was put into the new technique yesterday comes from there. Activating his unique ability, Pack swung and hit the power meter with all his might. Nak-soo was amazed with delight. After such an epic blow, the result on the screen was the number 1120. However, Hyun-soo himself was shocked by his abilities and did not believe himself. Hyun-soo thought about the fact that he used lightning strike like yesterday, but the power is completely incomparable, so this is what control over chi energy gives. Nak-soo ran out to Park and told him that he was an A-class warrior, after which Park asked permission to try again. Nak-soo looked at the broken shield and realized that if Choi Jun-sung had been hit with the same force, he would already be dead. The evaluator refused the request for another hit because he had no spare shields left, so would have to move on to the next test. When testing kicks, the result was 1,377 units. The demon called the guy a brat, because if he had concentrated his chi faster, he would have already knocked out 1,500, but he was just a little short of reaching the C class. After passing most of the tests, Nak-su announced that Hyun-soo has a stable A class, and although they are not finished yet, he is confident that Park will be assigned this particular class. Nak-su told Hyun that if he wanted, he could take the most important test in the afternoon, that is, a battle simulation, but before that he needed to go to the canteen and get some food. Arriving at the dining room, Hyun-soo ordered ramen, since he had not eaten it for a long time due to inflation after the destruction of factories. The demon began to ask whether it was tasty, then talk about how in his homeland they also eat all kinds of noodles, and called noodles the best product in the universe. Hyun-soo handed him some noodles asking him to help himself, and then burst into loud laughter, while the teacher scolded him for teasing him because he couldn't eat. Puck approached the door of the battle simulation joyfully, but when he saw a stranger coming out of there, completely covered with wounds and abrasions, he quickly changed his mood. As soon as Hyun-soo entered the room, Nak-soo immediately began to talk about how this system was created by a brilliant engineer and C-class hunter, Anderson Walker. Combat simulation gives you the most realistic feeling of fighting monsters. The damage received in the simulation also has realistic consequences. There are only 10 levels, but since Hyun-soo has an A class, he starts from the 4th. The demon, just like Hen, was surprised at the realism of the simulation and said that the one who created this machine was clearly versed in the magic of mystical dimensions. The demon explained to Hen that the magic of mystical dimensions is used to deceive the enemy, or to hide something. The first monster appeared from the bushes. The demon, noticing him, took a swing and hit the monster, but as it turned out, he had already run out of strength and he could no longer kill monsters. His hand went through the body. But Pak did great. He easily dealt with the monster. Suddenly 3 more monsters jumped out. Hen activated his ability and, as ordered, performed a lazy donkey somersault. The monsters were already ready to attack again, but they were crushed with one leg by a giant monster, who then switched to Puck, and swinging, hit, but missed. Hen began to run away, and the monster chased him, destroying everything in his path, and the guy at that time did not know what to do, because the monster was too huge. Puck asked the teacher for help, but he replied that the guy had a great opportunity to understand what he was capable of, so he should come up with something himself. Puck realized that if he just ran away, he wouldn't be assigned a class, so he turned around and kicked the monster with all his might. It didn't help, because the monster instantly came to his senses, repairing the damaged part of his leg, and then grabbed Hen's body with 2 palms and lifted him up. Puck knew that if he lost consciousness now, it would be over, so he should pull himself together, calm his breathing and distribute his internal energy throughout his body. Puck did everything as the teacher punished him and immediately felt the energy of a heavenly demon in himself. Thinking about how quickly the energy spreads through the veins, he immediately decided to use it, and activating it, exploded the monster's palms so that the fingers flew in different directions. The next action was a powerful kick to the monster's face, and then Puck began to simply trample everything he saw. Park returned to that battle simulation room when Nak-soo announced that the 4th level had been completed and that if the guy was ready to continue, then the 5th level would be ready in 5 minutes. While Nak-soo was pondering the fact that he had never seen anyone break through the system of physical suppression, Lee Mi-na, a Class A hunter and member of the association, approached him from behind. Lee Mi-na noticed that Hyun-soo is strong, and Nak-soo agreed with her and added that since this guy has great potential, they will see a lot more. While Mi was analyzing Pak, Nak was surprised that members of the association had already been sent here, imagining how quickly rumors of talents reached the association. At this time, the girl was thinking about the fact that she could not afford to have such a rare Class A fighter taken away from under the nose of the guild. Puck at this time found himself in some new location, full of snow and cold, and the teacher at this time was surprised that this magician also knew how to create the illusion of weather. After all, even among sorcerers who mastered the technique of mystical measurements, few are capable of this. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a barefoot girl appeared, asking for help, who ran up to Puck and buried her face in him. Puck began to ask the girl about what happened to her and how she got here, but she was silent, smiling, and then raised her head and bared her teeth at the guy. She grabbed him by the neck and flew up with him, starting to choke him, and Puck did not understand what was happening and why there were vampires in the 5th level of the simulation. Mi noticed that this was a very rare talent, and Hen was different from all the awakened ones she had met. While another vampire was mocking Puck, the guy found himself behind him and with a powerful blow punched a hole through him, and tore out his heart. Nok-Su was very happy that Park had passed the 5th level, and asked him if he agreed to move on to the 6th level after a 30-minute break. Out of breath, Hyun went out into the corridor to Nok-Su, upset because it seemed to him that he could have done better, and Nok tried to convince him that there was nothing to regret, because Hyun was the first among Class A fighters to pass the 5th level. Park had already signed all the documents, and was about to leave, when suddenly Lee Min-na called out to him, and telling him that she was from the association, extended her hand to him as an acquaintance. Hyun was very worried, but still shook his hand, and the teacher again began to make fun of the guy, asking how he was feeling and promising crowds of women running after him in order to meet him, only because Pak was a student of the Heavenly Demon. Mi handed Hyun the paper and asked him to read it, saying that it was a contract to be signed by the association. After that, she confidently stated that any A-class hunter would be attracted to conditions like theirs, and then asked Hen not to rush, saying that she would wait without any problems. Hen was thinking about the fact that he, too, would finally become a hunter. The contract also stated that he would have a stable salary and an allowance for expeditions to portals. Looking back, he recalled that when he was a support, he had to pay a deposit to get this position. The girl said that she would like to point out that this contract was drawn up individually for Hen. The teacher at this time was thinking about how beautiful Mi was, because even the women in his homeland were not as beautiful as her. The demon was getting to the bottom of Hen, asking what he would do when such a beauty offered to sign an important document, and at that time Mi was worried that, judging by Hen's face, he didn't like the conditions. The teacher said that at such moments you still need to think with your head and set conditions, because Hen deserves more. Seeing that the association would need to serve for 10 years, Hen said that he would prefer a 5-year contract, and noted that the premium for risking life and limb was low, considering that he was required to conduct raids in the C-class portal. Mi was surprised that a newcomer could set such conditions, but still, this is a newcomer who is really needed by the association, because he has prospects of growing to C-class and they should not miss him. Suddenly an unfamiliar girl burst into the room, saying that the associations were again at their own pace, and then looked at me and began to scold her for the fact that they do not value hired hunters at all, and always write such Kabbalistic contracts. The girl introduced herself, saying that she was Ha Yurak from the Red Lions Guild. Ha Yurak and Hyun-Soo shook hands, after which Yurak asked if she had interfered with them, to which Hyun replied that she had not, and at that time he himself was shocked that he was dealing with Hunter S-class. Yurak sat down next to me and said with confidence that the Red Lions Guild would offer Hen much more than the association, no matter what they offered. The teacher noticed that Yurak was very strong, and then said that in this world he had never met such strength. Yurak began to talk about the obviousness of the choice, because in the guild Hen will have much wider opportunities than in this grabber corporation, because the association has a lot of expenses, and me, defending her campaign, began to explain that the association has a monopoly on portal raids. Yurak said that Mi's information is outdated, because the Red Lions Guild received the same rights and is now just waiting for the official decision of the commission. Mi threatened to check the accuracy of the information, and Pak at this time was surprised that the Red Lions Guild was now as powerful as a government agency. While the two girls were arguing among themselves, Hen approached them and distracted them, saying that he had already made a decision. At this time, complete violence was happening in the Class B portal. The mermaids and hunters were fighting in full swing. One of the hunters was thinking about the fact that they were in trouble, because it was said that they would have to walk on wet ground, but there was a deep sea. Not only are there more mermen than hunters, but they are also faster. This is definitely not a Class B portal, and if they don't come up with something, they will be destroyed. He decided to call the Sergeant Major, because he has a unique ability for emergencies, and when the guy finally called the Sergeant Major, he gave the order to retreat to land, saying that he would detain them on his own. The chief activated one of the most complex C-class techniques, lasting up to 10 minutes, the so-called shadow clone technique. Everyone began to rejoice that thanks to the foreman they survived, and he replied that when everyone gets out of here, they will owe beer for his real body. The hunter immediately wondered where the Sergeant Major's real body was, and then saw him crawling out of the water and was delighted. But turning around, the foreman noticed a strange splash of water behind him, foreshadowing something was wrong. From this splash, At the same second, a huge monster's muzzle appeared, to which the foreman did not have time to react, which is why he was bitten into two parts by it right in front of the hunter's eyes. Me and Yurak at this time continued to sit on the sofa and think about how Hyun-soo fooled them. When Hen announced his decision, he said that while he waited, suddenly there would be a guild with more favorable conditions for him, so he would not rush yet. Having said that both girls knew his number, he asked to call him back later, after which he got up and left the room. Yurak was angry at his choice, because here both the Red Lions and the association offered him a contract, and he left, and she also doubted that any other guilds would even turn to him. Me looked at Yurak and thought that the girl had not changed a bit, and remained just as hot-tempered. The notification that appeared said that the skill class was Transcendental, and the skill was the Heavenly Demon Transcendence Walk, which made Hyun-soo quite shocked. The teacher explained to Hyun-soo that now he will study the gate of the superiority of the Heavenly Demon, and classes are earned by defeating a strong monster, or when you find a rare artifact. Stance and proper movement are considered the foundation of martial arts, and only after learning these basics can Hen begin to learn techniques. The teacher asked Hen to watch and memorize, because given his inclinations, he would be able to learn it the first time. He began to show the first set of 5 superiority gate movements. He talked about how when a heavenly demon appears, movements should be light and smooth, and the rest should depend on the situation. Hyun-soo watched the teacher's actions with fascination, surprised that the demon was moving, but at the same time it seemed like it wasn't. The guy didn't understand at all how he could repeat this and whether it was even possible. Besides, the notification that arrived said about a decrease in cognitive ability and failure to assimilate information. The demon explained that even with his ability, Hen cannot comprehend mastery immediately, so he should concentrate and observe, because a lot of trial and error always stands in the way of mastery. The teacher began to show the second set of movements, the flight of the heavenly demon, which Hyun-soo watched with even greater interest and surprise. The teacher said that Pak would ride the air like a dragon, and in the blink of an eye he would be behind the enemy. The old man showed the flight of the heavenly demon once again, and Hen, watching this, thought about how fast the teacher was, because this flight's speed could not be compared to when he was dragging him through the air. The demon told the disciple that if he mastered the appearance of the heavenly demon and the flight of the heavenly demon, he would be able to learn the first 6 techniques of the cult, namely the crushing blows of the heavens. The notification came again, which said that Pak had received information about the transcendent class skill, that is, crushing blows, which Pak was very surprised by. The teacher ordered me to stop making faces and look carefully, because the third set of movements is even more difficult. The demon who had just been standing in front of Hen abruptly disappeared, evaporating into nothingness. The guy's cognitive ability decreased to 0, in fact, as did the assimilation of information. While the guy was peering into the void, the demon appeared behind him, which frightened Hen, after which he said that this was called the technique of escaping the soul of a heavenly demon. The fourth complex is called the Celestial Demon Soul Vortex, which the teacher naturally also demonstrated. The demon said that the name was the whole point, but still explained that you need to spin so quickly that an invisible vortex is created that absorbs the enemy's soul, and also said that this is one of his favorite counterattack techniques. At this time, Puck was thinking about how he could repeat this if he did not see anything at such a speed and therefore did not understand anything. According to the demon, after mastering the soul vortex and releasing the soul, the following 5 techniques of crushing blows from heaven will become available to Pak. He also said that there are only 12 techniques, and for the 12th technique the minimum requirement is to know the 5th gate complex of the heavenly demon supremacy. Park realized that even if he fully mastered the supremacy walk, it did not guarantee that he would be able to master the 12th heaven-crushing blows technique. The demon began the 5th complex, the descent of the heavenly demon sovereign. He raised his foot and stomped it just once, and the ground disappeared from under Hen's feet, and the whole world turned upside down. The teacher told Hen that he should rise up so that everything around him would bow before him, because this is the whole point. At this time, the association was discussing the fact that only 4 B-class hunters and 5 supports survived. The conversation turned to the deceased foreman Odaeho, and then about the fact that this was the association's 3rd raid into the portal of the Ilcha Mountains, and again a defeat. One said that the intelligence data on this portal did not give them the correct classification, and the second began to ask the intelligence department what they were doing. Everyone began to argue sharply with each other about the intelligence department, the expedition team for mopping up, equipment and crews. Their attention was captured by the girl's loud and unexpected cry addressing them. She stood up so that everyone could hear her, and said that even if everyone fought among themselves now, this would not solve the problem. Puck woke up in his bed in the middle of the day, and the first thing he saw was the teacher hovering over him, which he was very scared of. The demon called Hen a disgrace and told him about how he fainted when he couldn't stand the training. Puck lowered his eyes, remembering how he tried to learn the gate of the sky demon's superiority. The demon began to say that the gate of superiority of the heavenly demon is a skill that allows you to move through the air as if on the ground, and if the teacher began to show everything in full force, then Puck would die instantly. Puck squeezed a piece of the blanket, and thought that he never wanted to go through this again. The demon told the guy that he was not ready right now and would need a chi charge of at least 120 years, advised him to focus on increasing his energy potential and start with the technique of the appearance of a heavenly demon and the flight of a heavenly demon. At this time, Li Mina told her colleagues that, in her opinion, the association should consider cooperation with other associations. Mi said that it was worth considering cooperation with the Red Lions Guild, and immediately a flurry of discontent and misunderstanding rained down on her as to how such a thing could be proposed. Someone said that the guild had already been given the rights to use portals, and someone told me that if this was her way of working, then she should quit. The girl sat down, trying to restrain her emotions, and began to think about the fact that her colleagues, in fact, did not understand at all what it meant to conduct a raid in the portal, because none of them had ever poked their nose there in their lives. Hyun, walking down the street and looking at his smartphone, noticed a message about salary transfer, which he was very happy about and decided to pay the hospital bills for Hyuntae first. After payment there was almost nothing left, and Hyun-soo was upset, and also remembered that he had the opportunity to sign the contract. He looked at the notification panel and saw many job offers from various guilds, and the association and the Red Lions had already made him an offer. Putting the phone in his pants pocket, he happily suggested that the demon go buy ramen, because Hyun would have money soon anyway. The demon asked if the guy meant those noodles and red broth, and he answered positively, and also added that the teacher should try it too. Seeing the teacher's swing, Hen repeated his last phrase again and dodged the blow. The demon called Hen a brat, and he replied with a grin that he had learned something about the appearance of the heavenly demon. Park entered the store and was already surprised that there was no one there, when he suddenly noticed Yoon and asked her if everything was normal, to which she answered positively. Smiling, he asked her if she still worked on the weekends, to which she again agreed. Putting something in a box, she explained everything by saying that she could not do anything, since she had a small brother and sister, and she needed to try for them. Puck thought about something, and then went up to the checkout and, not wanting to distract the girl, asked her permission to check out his goods on his own. Having punched the goods, he left at the checkout an amount significantly greater than the purchase price, after which he informed Yoon where the money was and said goodbye and left the store. The girl, noticing this, shouted to Hen asking him to come back and pick up the forgotten change, but he ran away, first answering that he did it on purpose. The demon told Hen that he was a villain for planning to buy a girl's heart with money, and the guy began to explain himself and say that this was not so. He said that Yun, like him, also lost her parents when the portals opened 2 years ago, and now she is raising her brother and sister alone. Then he said that the girl, just like him, sacrificed school to earn money for her family. Suddenly the demon sharply hit Hen on the back of the head, saying that his student should not sing his own praises. While Puck was eating ramen by both cheeks and praising its taste, the demon watched him with envy, and then asked if these noodles were really so tasty, to which Puck replied that they make the best ramen in the world here. The demon grabbed the guy by the hand, calling him a scoundrel, and put the noodles wrapped on a stick directly into his mouth, and then swallowed it. The teacher smiled and, showing a finger up, began to praise ramen, saying that it was truly one of the most delicious dishes in the universe. Patting the guy on the head, the teacher told him that, apparently, he could only eat from his hands, and then asked him to feed him. Yoon walked down the street and thought that she was very lucky, since the lunchboxes that kids like were not all taken apart. Suddenly, hydrants began to explode all over the street, and the water pouring out of them began to spread everywhere. In a split second, water filled the entire street. People who had just recently been calmly walking, and cars began to sink, and mermaids appeared out of nowhere and began to kill everyone who caught their eye. Suddenly some mermaid girl flew up, holding a trident in her hands, and shouted loudly that this world and this land of abundance were now theirs, and they would drive out everyone who filled it. The teacher pondered the strangeness of the fact that although this dimension is deserted, here he always feels a surge of energy, and the reason that it was through this place that he found himself in another time and space. Puck jumped up and began happily telling the teacher that he felt rested and full of energy after this energy circulation practice, although before it he was very tense. The teacher said that the circulation of energy not only increases the energy potential, it also clears the flows of negative energy, and Pak was glad that if he practiced this, he would no longer have to go to the doctors. The demon sternly told the disciple to stop talking nonsense and take a stance to begin practicing the appearance of the heavenly demon and the flight of the heavenly demon. Although Hen's cognitive abilities were not at their best during that training, he at least to some extent learned these techniques thanks to his awakened ability. He tried to reproduce as much as he remembered, and the teacher, watching this, thought that Hen was truly gifted, because he did so well for the first time. Suddenly, the association began to have an alarm, siren and panic due to the mobilization in Gangdonggu due to the invasion of monsters in the portal of the Ilcha Mountains. At this time, Mi was thinking about the fact that she should have united with the Red Lions, because if this is in Gangdonggu, then the Isaac Guild is already in place, and its leader is Choi Hyun-woo, the Panther Man. Mi shouted that she needed to be in the center of the fighting and asked to send all the fighters that were available as quickly as possible. Knowing that the Isaac Guild could not cope without outside help, the girl ran to the exit. When the demon and Puck left the portal, the teacher began to gently address the guy and said that after training he wanted to refresh himself, after which he asked him to make him ramen. Puck, taking out a saucepan, listened to the teacher's requests to turn on the so-called magic lantern from which the messenger speaks in order to learn more about this world. As soon as Park turned on the TV, the first thing they said was that there was now flooding and chaos in the Gangdonggu area. Mermaids had filled the city and were killing the townspeople. Hen began to worry when he realized that the fishmen had escaped from the portal in the Ilcha Mountains, which meant that the third raid was also defeated. The demon asked Park if the Ilcha Mountains were the place where they were recently, to which Park answered positively, and then remembered Yun, because this is her area. Puck rushed out into the street without hesitation, but from the very first second, obstacles appeared in his way. The car is too long, but if he could run in a straight line, he would be there in 20 minutes, but there are buildings in his way. Hen, having considered all the options, decided to take advantage of the flight of the heavenly demon, and within a moment found himself on the roof of the building. The demon flying behind admired Hyun-soo's ingenuity and skills as he watched him jump across the rooftops. At the epicenter of the events there was a real mess between people, mermaids and the Black Panther Choi Hyun-woo. The panther, hanging on a pole above the water, ordered his fighters to fight confidently and without panic. One guy, brandishing his weapon, shouted that he was a local butcher named Ban Bo Gum, but did not at all notice the merman flying at him, whom he was still able to kill. The chemist archer from Gangdonggu joined the fight, whose motorcycle Ban Bo admired, considering that he himself was standing on a wobbly boat. But he didn't have to admire for long, because a split second later a huge monster jumped out of the water and, without much effort, bit off the poor man's head. The archer was about to avenge her dead friend and aimed at the monster, but the panther rushed at her, covered her with his back and ordered her to leave Bo Gum, because he did not want the girl to be killed either. But apparently it was quite noisy, because the monster swallowed the poor guy and took off in pursuit of the motorcycle. Hyun-soo, having reached the place, stopped on the roof, and then did a tiger squat to the left, which is a common technique exactly until Park puts a charge of energy into him. Having planted the charge, he jumped down from the roof of a multi-story building, hitting his powerful blow right in the head of the monster that was chasing the panther and the girl. The panther and the girl were naturally pleased with this turn of events, and were surprised that this guy killed such a dangerous and unshakable monster with one blow, counting on the fact that the guy belonged to some kind of C-class. But as it turned out, the monster was not killed and is now chasing Hen across the rooftops, destroying everything in its path, while the demon calmly watches what is happening from above. Seeing how much Hen was suffering, the teacher nevertheless suggested to him that you can increase the strength of your muscles many times over when you distribute energy, and in response Pak asked why the teacher did not say this earlier. At this time, sitting behind the wheel, Me was cursing because there were traffic jams on the roads and the metro was crowded with people as usual at the most inopportune moment. Suddenly, the news started broadcasting a stream about what was happening at the epicenter and talking about how an unknown hunter was fighting this monster. But me immediately assumed that it was Hyun-Soo. Hyun-Soo activated an adapted version of the Sky Demon Flight and hit the monster well with this move. The demon told Hen that the most vulnerable point of snakes is the chin, and that he should get close using the flight of the heavenly demon, and then make an uppercut. The leader of all these monsters watched everything from afar and asked the ruler to send her his strength and asked to immediately deal with Hen, considering him a dangerous person. Hen was already one step away from killing the monster, but he suddenly became brutal and was able to throw the guy into the wall, reacting very quickly. The mermaid woman influenced the monster and forced it to absorb Hen, take away his power and grow, and at that time the monster looked at the guy with burning eyes and anticipated his death. The demon hovered in the air above the sorceress's head and thought that since she supports the monsters with healing magic, then this is a completely different matter. While she exclaimed that the whole world would belong to her, the demon realized that he had never felt such a strong desire to intervene as he did now, and if he were material, he would turn everyone into dust. The monster was about to devour the guy, and the sorceress was rejoicing at the imminent victory, when suddenly their attention was attracted by a voice from behind, ordering everyone to stand still. As it turned out, this voice belonged to Yurak, who switched to Hen and began to praise him for continuing to protect the city, even though things were bad for him. Yurak rushed into battle, telling Hen that he would handle the rest on his own, and at that time the demon grabbed the guy and flew away with him, saying that this was not a flight, but a strategic retreat. Things were really bad for Yun at this time, because she begged the two huge mermaids not to touch her and to leave her alive. Soon a panther and an archer girl arrived, who effortlessly killed the monsters and saved Yun. The three of them decided that the archer would take Yun to a shelter, and the panther would go in search of any other survivors. Hyun-Soo woke up and asked the demon about what had happened, and in response received information that the snake was controlled by a witch, and if not for her, then victory would have been on Hyun's side. But, unfortunately, he lost. Puck asked the teacher about the reason that he carried the guy to escape, to which the demon replied that it was only a strategic retreat, and ordered the guy to listen to what the teacher said, even while unconscious. As soon as the teacher said that there was nothing more to worry about, some kind of mess began to happen outside the window. Hen immediately stood up and declared that the snake was his prey, and he would not let anyone take his prey. But the demon pushed the guy, and when he found himself on the floor, he told him that with such an exhausted body, there was no question of fighting now. On the contrary, meditation and energy circulation were needed. The demon asked Hen who this warrior was, to which he received the answer that this was the leader of the Red Lions Guild, Ha Yurak. Looking through the window towards the battle site, the teacher said that since it was her, it would not be difficult for her to deal with these two. Puck jumped up and headed for the exit, saying that since he started, he had to finish the job, and the teacher explained to him that the guy's body couldn't stand it. Hen turned around and screamed that he lost his parents because of people like them, and because of them his brother is in the hospital. The guy clenched his hand into a fist and told the teacher that he had gained strength thanks to him, and he did not want to give up halfway. The demon looked at Hen silently at this time, thinking that he saw talent in him from the very beginning, but did not expect that he could have such a fighting spirit. He looked into Hen's eyes and noticed a fire appearing in them, after which he took off and said that he had one way in mind. The guy asked for details of this method, and the demon immediately warned that the method had quite serious consequences. Yurak at this time was interested in where this sorceress with whom she fought had gone. The demon explained to Hen that this was an opportunity to get a taste of the power that awaited him in the future, and that this time was limited and one should not forget about mortality and not get into trouble. Yurak was already preparing to fry a huge monster, who was looking at her with burning eyes, thirsting for blood. The witch watched the battle from afar and thought about how angry the ruler would be and how unexpected it was to meet her equal here. The mermaid witch took up her old ways and began to rise along with the water, turning to the ruler. But Yurak noticed this and told the mermaid that her worm was in danger, which is why she immediately appeared. With the remark that the mermaid was just in time, Yurak pointed her hand at the witch, and she immediately became enveloped in hot fire. Having finished with the mermaid, Yurak turned to the monster with a question about how he now lives without a healer, but she only saw how he was hiding under the water. Yurak began to take off her shoes, telling herself that this was the reason why there was no point in wearing expensive shoes. Taking off her shoes, she headed towards the monster, shouting that she was tired of standing on ceremony with him, and now was the time to end it. She flew up, but suddenly the head of a monster appeared from the water, after which it opened its mouth and began to suck in air. Due to the strong vacuum that had formed, the light girl entered the flow of this air and quickly headed down without the possibility of resistance, and soon found herself in the water. Rescuers flying by helicopter over the battle site announced to the leader that the evacuation of citizens had been completed and the area around them was clear. Yurak, who was underwater, did not despair at all and told herself that she was one of the 9 C-class hunters on this planet, after which she burst into hot flames and created a huge explosion around herself. Looking at the monster, she informed him that she had blown up all the buildings around, so he had nowhere else to hide and was now a corpse. She concentrated all her strength in her palm and was ready to finish off the monster, when suddenly Hen grabbed her hand, asking her to wait a little. Mi ran down the street to help Hen, knowing that he could not cope alone, because he had almost no experience in combat. In the window of a store along the road, she noticed cast iron weights and decided to buy one for herself, paying 15,000 won for it. The seller went out into the street to return Mi's forgotten change, but the girl had no time for it at all and was already trying to figure out how to use the weight. Yurak asked Hen why he came, to which he replied that he wanted to finish off the monster himself, which the girl did not agree with, saying that the monster pissed her off too. Smiling, she said that she would be more accommodating if Hen promised her to join the guild, after which he let go of her hand and looked at the monster. Yurak thought about the fact that Puck is somehow charged now, and even though she knows that Puck is talented, now he's like a taut string. Suddenly Hen disappeared, and Yurak was shocked by his speed and the fact that she didn't even notice how he moved. Hen activated level 1 crush strikes from the heavens and began attacking the monster with a technique called seed burning. After that, he activated the second level of heavenly crushing blows and began to hit the monster even harder with the help of burning the root. The demon watched everything from above and reflected on the fact that with the ritual he increased Hen's endurance to unimaginable heights. But he somehow also grabbed part of the muscle memory of the heavenly demon, which is passed on from generation to generation. Pak at this time activated the third level of crushing blows of heaven, burning leaves. Yurak and Mi, who arrived with the weight at this time, as well as the demon, watched the struggle between Hen and the monster, not understanding how this was possible. Suddenly Pak received a notification that the temporary awakening of the ability had been stopped, after which the guy began to spit blood and fall down. Yurak and Mi immediately rushed to help the guy, and the demon watched everything and was surprised that Pak grabbed 2 of the best beauties for himself at once. Yun finally returned home, where her brother and sister were waiting for her and worried, after which everyone hugged tightly after a long separation and cried together. The archer girl called the panther and said that she had taken Yun home, and the panther, in turn, said that the situation was gradually improving and that the leader of the Red Lions had dealt with the sorceress, and the snake was destroyed by that unknown hunter. The panther also told the girl that the water level in their location had dropped to almost 0, which means that it should soon go down in other places too. The girl shouted to Yun that the danger had passed, and now they could be calm, after which she thanked the savior. Hyun-soo woke up in a hospital bed from the demon's question whether the guy was going to get up. Hyun asked the teacher about what happened and how he ended up here, and the teacher scared and cursed about the guy's memory, after which he asked Pak if he really didn't remember anything at all. The demon began to tell him that he had lost consciousness after using the crushing blows of heaven. A moment later, he shouted that he was now thinking about how he could punish the impudent brat who dared to randomly use his crushing blows from the sky, and Puck began to make excuses by saying that he remembered nothing about her.